Good afternoon, Scott family. Good afternoon, Lisa. How you doing?
Hi, good afternoon.
Good to see you guys.
Good afternoon, I'm fine.
No worries. No worries. Well, I expect that a few more people will trickle in. We had, we had a handful more people who said they would plan to attend, but out of respect for everyone's time, we will go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, and thanks for coming to our virtual Q&A session for our primary program. We're exploring some new options to get in touch with not only our current families, but prospective families, so appreciate your flexibility and you joining us. For anybody that I don't know, but I think I know all of you, I'm Cara, and I do our admissions efforts here at the school, and I'm joined by some really great members of our Montessori team. I've got Mandy Boyle here on our primary team, Norma Bollinger, Simone Summer, Kishelle Miller, Maria Burkett, and Ignia de la Cruz. Those three ladies are assistants in the classroom. I'm also joined by our Montessori director, Heather McCabe. And finally, I have Miss Diana Woods joining us here as well. So for a couple of you that have students that are moving up from La Casa to primary, she might be a nice resource as we kind of talk through some things this afternoon. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Summer, to Simone. And these three ladies are going to speak a little bit about the program. We'll have plenty of time for questions, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So Ms. Summer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cara. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to just give a quick little overview of the Montessori classroom. The Montessori classroom has a 3-year age span. As many of you might know, might not know, we work with children from 3 to 6 years old, approximate, sometimes a little bit younger, sometimes they stay a little bit over the age of 6. And this allows them to learn from one another. So there's a lot of what people call peer teaching. The younger ones learn from the older ones help the younger ones, and are given guidance in that way when the guide or directress is busy. The typical Montessori day has a 3-hour work cycle, and in the morning, and then it continues in the afternoon. The classroom is divided into practical life, sensorial, math, language, and cultural areas. The children have a 3-hour uninterrupted time to choose work during that morning session. They have time to have their snack. We also have an indoor-outdoor flow with the materials, so they can take some materials inside and work outside if they so choose. So they're given the freedom to move, which is really important for this age. If you think about your little 3-year-old and their abilities to sit still is probably very little. So this gives them an opportunity to move throughout the classroom and choose work. So they have that time to choose independent work in the morning. Sometimes they're given a lesson one-on-one with the directress or guide, and there's sometimes small group lessons, and there's usually a large group at some stage during the morning, kind of a culmination. A lot of times we choose to do it at the end of the morning to all get together before we move outside onto the playground or in a big open space. So granted, now I'm talking about not currently what we're doing, but obviously what we were doing. During the 3-hour work cycle also, there's a lot of this peer teaching that happens. So sometimes you'll see the older children giving a lesson to that younger child because they look up to their peers more than they will to us. So this is a great opportunity for them to have that time with their peers. This is also very important for their social cohesion in the group in the classroom community, helping them feel a part of the community and feeling like they're a contributing member of the community. So in the classroom, we teach conflict resolution and social cohesion skills through lessons we called Grace and Courtesy. And this is basically how we teach them, how would we say, please respect my space, please go away, I need to concentrate, please help me, anything like that. It helps them to learn the words to use when they're struggling. And this is something that we really, really ask parents to also help us with, because if you guys are doing this at home, when they're having their bouts of frustration or are about to have a meltdown, if you can help them with the words that they can use, it really also helps them in the classroom with getting along with one another and expressing what they need and what they want so that we can guide them. So that's kind of an overview of our classroom day, I guess. I am going to hand it over. We're going to talk a little bit more about the areas in the classroom. And so I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Bollinger, and she can talk about our practical life areas.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Samar. Very well. So I'm going to introduce you to the practical life areas of the classroom, like Ms. Summer said. And these are the activities that the children first get introduced to when they enter the environment, no matter what age they are. And as Ms. Summer said, we take the Montessori primary environment is for children age 3 to 6, but sometimes we take them a little younger and sometimes a little bit older. But what is practical life? Practical life activities are actually the daily activities that occur in your household, but they also have a purpose. They're activities that connect the child to their own family life, but also their culture. They are activities that make them feel comfortable in their own culture because these are the things that their culture are to do. They are related to self-care, but they're also related to the child's surroundings and environment. They are activities that adults simply don't like to do. So you would refer to them probably as chores, but these are activities that have a different purpose for the child because they're activities that they simply love to do. And one of the reasons why they love to do them is because they see you doing them in the home environment. I see Mandy, are you walking around and showing practical life? Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Mandy, and I'll talk. Yeah. That's perfect. Thank you. We just had some maintenance done in my room, so I don't want to show you all the stuff behind me right now. It's not orderly like a Montessori environment is. Anyway, back to what the practical life activities are. So I guess you probably have figured out by now, they're kind of like those chores that you have to do, your laundry, you're sweeping the floor. But for the children, the purpose is so different because they so much want to participate in family life. And from the day that they were born, they have observed you walking around the house, doing these activities, and for them, they want to be part of your life. They imitate what they see you do, and for them, they just so much want to be involved. They want to participate. They want to help you. In the Montessori classroom, we divide, or the practical life activities come under 3 different categories. One of them, which you started at home before you brought your child to school, is referred to the activities that are care for self. So Mandy's, there you go. Mandy's showing us some of the dressing frames, and I brought one here as well. Mandy, keep it on the bow frame. There you go. Here's the bow frame. And so your child has to be able to, well, maybe not so much now in 2020, but tie their shoes, for example. So we have a bow frame in the classroom. The care of self activities would be anything to do with dressing your child, learning to dress themselves, brush their teeth, putting on their own shoes, types of activities like that so they can become independent and care for themselves. The other category we refer to, Mandy's going to go over to the dusting activities.
What are they?
The care of the environment, please. That would be activities that are related to dusting shelves, dusting furniture, there's sweeping. There's another activity for the beginning of sweeping. We have washing, there's dusting. We have them washing the napkins and placemats that they use for lunch. Care of the environment also includes the outdoor environment. You don't have to go back outside, Mandy. But on the shelf, for example, all Montessori environments have lots of plants and caring for plants. So this would be an activity the child could choose just to care for the plants and give them water. The activities that I like the most are what we refer to as grace and courtesy. What's grace and courtesy? Well, grace and courtesy is just using good manners. So those are activities that involve using good manners that we role play for the children, but it's also for activities to teach them when they feel concerned for each other. How do you go to a child that needs help? We give them lessons on this. How do you offer a visitor food, for example? If you are a new parent and you were coming into our environment, our children would have had lessons on how to make you feel welcome. You would be sitting in an observer chair and a child would come up to you and say, would you like a spot of tea? And you hopefully will say yes. And the child will go over and use this piece of work right here that I have in my room, which is a teapot and a cup, and make you a cup of tea and serve it to you. So that would be one of the activities in practical life that we refer to as grace and courtesy. All of these activities have a really, really foundational purpose, though, in the Montessori environment. So one of them is their coordination of movement. Before they get to touch all of the beads for the golden beads lessons in math, they have to know how to carry everything and control their movement. It gives them independence. In Montessori, we're all about independence. It helps them adapt to their own society and culture, but most of all, it is the beginning of developing their concentration, which is what they're going to need for all of the following activities that these lovely colleagues of mine are going to talk to you about right now. So, and they are practiced during the entire 3-year cycle. So 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5, right up to 6-year-olds. So thank you. That was an overview of the Montessori practical life. And now I believe we are going over to Sensorial, Miss Boyle, right?
Yes, yep, me. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope it might sound right because I'm playing on the phone, so I'm not sure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our sensorial area. I'm going to turn my camera around so you can actually see it while I'm talking as well. But basically, our world is surrounded with things that we explore with our senses. So we have this sensorial area that helps the children refine their senses, and it offers materials from visual. This is where I'm going to get my camera turned around. Like visual with our pink tower. It goes from big to small so they can visually see it. We have a piece of work for their sense of touch. This is called the tactile boards, and they're made with sandpaper so you can see rough and smooth. And we have the auditory for our hearing. Is on a different shelf. I'm just going to quickly show you. I'll see if I can find the loudest one. Nope. It goes from loud to soft so the children can explore with their sense of hearing. There's one for smelling. They have little bottles to smell. And then we even have a tasting exercise where they can explore sweet and salty and bitter tastes. The sensorial materials, they all are manipulative, so the children can explore with them. They all have a control of error, so the children can correct for themselves. So if they were doing a piece of material like these cylinder blocks, they would find that if they put that in there, this one wouldn't fit here, so they can correct it themselves. There is no need for teachers or adults to tell them they're doing something incorrectly. They can tell for themselves and correct themselves, which helps boost their self-esteem. Each of our sensorial materials isolates one concept at a time, so it's very clear. A lot of the sensorial materials are vocabulary lessons. So even though we refer to it as sensorial, it really is a lot of language work as well, because we give them the vocabulary that they need to describe things and how they can classify their own environments. And a lot of our materials in the sensorial area have 10 pieces. So it kind of ties in very nicely with the decimal system and math, which Miss Summer is going to talk about. So I'm going to switch places with her so our speakers don't interfere with each other. All right. Thank you.
We need you to unmute, Miss Summer.
Sorry. I'm going to talk a little bit about math, the math area, and Miss Boyle has graciously offered to show the math area as I talk. In the math, I love the math area of Montessori. It's just fantastic. So we work from simple to complex, and we work from the concrete to the abstract in math in Montessori. We've got all the materials are very hands-on, which is, you know, in typical traditional education, things are often taught to us just rote memorization. And it doesn't work like that at all in Montessori. So it's really important that when all of this craziness is over, you come and observe, if you haven't already, a primary classroom, because you're gonna see these materials and be like, that's not how I would teach addition, or whatever it is. The purpose of the math materials is to help make the abstract concepts very concrete for the child. So the math materials build on each other in complexity. So we introduce numerals, with sandpaper numbers. Miss Boyle's going to show us. And that's, again, kind of like our sandpaper sounds, where they're tracing them and saying the numerals. We do one-to-one counting. So not just repetition of counting, but seeing that as you're counting something, it means it's got a numeral that goes with it. We teach quantities of all sorts. We do the mathematical operations with the golden beads. And we do a lot of sequencing, and there are the beautiful chains that the children love. And the 3-year-olds, boy, they are gonna go straight to that. And we often have to say, look with your eyes, look with your eyes, because they just love them. They're very attractive to children. So it's a great way for them to get, if they're attracted to them, they want to learn them. So the 3-year-old is not necessarily going to be quite ready for them, but they're watching their older peers do them, and they're thinking, yay, someday I'm going to be able to do that. And this teaches skip counting, multiplication, along with identifying the actual numerals as they're finding little tags for every single little bead that they count. So I can only imagine that little 3-year-old that just came on touching all the beads. Anyway, and so that's kind of our math area. I am going to turn it back over to Miss Boyle, and she is going to talk about our fantastic language area.
Okay, I can put my audio back on. She's out. So to talk a little bit about our language area, it is a little different than traditional language in that we first of all do sounds versus the names of letters. So if you are playing games, language games at home with your young children, we would suggest, if they're coming to our school next year, that they do sound games with phonics versus the name of the letter. So A versus A. Doing all these sounds really helps promote your child in being able to blend words together sooner rather than later. It's easier to blend words with sounds versus the names of the letters. So our language area is really broken into two different areas. There's receptive language, which is listening and reading, and then expressive language, which would be speaking and writing. We use precise language with the children from the moment they come into the classroom. We encourage them to speak in full sentences, and something you can do to encourage that at home is when we ask a child a question, rather than saying, "Did you eat breakfast this morning?" we would say, "What did you have for breakfast?" So they would need to be a little more expressive and use more words rather than yes, and then nothing else comes out of that conversation. So you want to engage in conversation as much as you can with these younger ones. We use cursive letters. So we have our cursive letters, and this would be traced like this. And this is I. And we would say I like iguana, I, igloo. We would not use the name of the letter I. This is not C. We introduce it as k, 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 cat. There are many pieces of material around our classroom that aren't even in the language area that promote indirect and direct preparations for writing. So a lot of what Ms. Bowling was talking about with our practical life, the material is laid out left to right, which is an indirect preparation for writing. Or the way that they use their fingers picking up pieces of a puzzle to promote their pincer grip is an indirect preparation for writing. So there are all these wonderful intermingled pieces of our classroom that work together. And to tie it all together, Ms. Bollinger is going to talk a little bit about our cultural area. Over to you, Ms. Bollinger.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Montessori culture. We all have our favorites. That might be one of mine, but then again, I don't know. One of the beauties of Montessori, and particularly culture, the whole essence of Montessori education is it's holistic education. So different than traditional education, we try not to isolate the subjects in any area. We always try to make them connected. And I think to end this presentation with the culture, I think I can probably give you a good example of how we do that by going through the different cultural materials. So first of all, our Montessori cultural activities are a means for exploring the environment. So that's a really key word there, exploring. And again, this is one of the foundational concepts of Montessori. We are not giving the children the answers to everything. We're posing the questions and we're giving them the materials to explore and discover on their own what they're looking for or what they need to learn. So we give them little tidbits, and hopefully their curiosity is going to lead them to want to do more, to want to research this. So again, like I said, it's a very holistic approach, and in particular to the cultural subjects. We start the cultural subjects as well and Montessori, after those practical life, after they know how to walk in the classroom and wipe their feet, by the way, we introduce them to the whole universe. So their whole planet. We don't start with something smaller, their own little island, the island of St. Thomas. No, we introduce them from the very beginning to this wonderful planet that we call Earth. And the younger children learn a concept as such simple as our planet Earth is made up of just land and water. So right away, we're starting to teach the globe. We're starting to teach about our planet Earth to the youngest children. But the cultural subjects help the child learn. He needs to learn through geography what's on his planet, how he interacts with what's on the planet, and how he's going to connect with his universe. So the child needs knowledge of his universe. And again, we want the child to be an explorer. We want them to explore everything in the environment. So the globe is what we start with in geography. So obviously geography is one of the cultural subjects. Also, we have an area of the classroom, and Ms. Boyle is touching the globe. If you would move over, Ms. Boyle, to your botany area, please. So on the planet Earth, the land is made up of all of the plants, right? So we get into it right away with the study of the plants on our planet Earth, and we have a variety of materials. Ms. Boyle is walking around the environment. We might start with just flowers and flower arranging, which will lead to the children studying the parts of the flower, planting their own plants right from seeds. Any different, the names of all the different leaf shapes, sorry about that, let me slow down. All of the areas related to understanding plant life in their child's universe and world. Then we might, and we want them to have an appreciation of nature. These children are going to be the stewards of our planet, and they're the ones that are going to be protecting us, or hopefully cleaning up our planet. So we start right away with that in the primary environment for 3 to 6-year-olds, and they love these activities. We encourage you, especially now in this time, outdoors as much as possible. Really, really help your child and be involved yourself in connecting with nature. We also include music in our cultural subjects. So when I was saying earlier that the cultural subjects are connected, let's say for some reason we wanted to learn in geography, we started to focus on, say, Europe. So the children might learn about the plants, right? Botany in Europe, the animals in Europe. But we also might introduce the music in Europe. So we would learn songs possibly from Europe, and we would learn about the composers. And we would sit in the classroom and play music, and the children would be introduced to the famous composers that might come from Europe. So music is a big part of the environment. We start with the 3-year-olds, just like in traditional, with doing rhythm, basic songs and finger plays, moving right up to learning how to play notes on something we call the Montessori bells. They might learn how to write their own music. And then, of course, there is art. So our purpose for art in the Montessori environment, again, it begins right with the 3-year-olds, but really what we're trying to do is get them to appreciate and want to explore art through all the different mediums. So we want them to have a greater awareness of color, free-flowing ideas, and just knowledge and experience to go on and create their own ideas. I brought a sample of a painting that a 5-year-old did for me in one of my classrooms. So this painting was done by a 5-year-old. Last but not least, another cultural subject that we start right away in the Montessori environment with our 3-year-olds is science. And again, we like to encourage the children to explore. One of the things that we just did recently in our our new Zoom distant learning, we just had a theme of colors and rainbows. And so we introduced the children to this art science experiment, which is just mixing colors. And it's just the primary colors with food coloring, and the children get to mix these colors. But more than that, they also learn about the famous artists, and we utilize, in the primary environment, we work with charcoal, we work with pastels, we work with paint, we get messy. We get messy, but we love it. So the whole idea for all of these materials is for the children to become young explorers and really appreciate their world, everything that lives in it and everything that's on it, and to care for their planet. So thank you. I think I went a little over there, but I just love the cultural subjects. Thank you.
Miss Abay, that wraps it up from our end.
Yep.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for that overview. Very in-depth and involved, and very helpful, especially now given the circumstances. You know, observations are definitely wonderful and a part of our process, but the in-depth and close-up views of everything was really incredible, and so maybe something that we might or might not see every piece of during an observation. So thank you.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, that was really wonderful.
Spur of the moment idea.
Rolling with it is the name of the game. So for everybody out there in the audience, certainly want to open it up for any questions that you have. From what I can tell, everyone that we have, except for Ms. Jones, if she's still out there, is a current family with a toddler moving up. And I know Ms. Jones has a 3-year-old. So any questions that you have, feel free to unmute yourself and share them, or if you want to type them into the chat box, we're happy to talk through that with you now.
I do have a question. How many students do you have in each classroom currently?
Okay.
Thank you. Would either of you ladies like to take that one? It's different for everyone in the makeup and components of the classes as well.
So in Montessori, with the mixed age groups, we tend to go with a larger number of children because we have children in the 3rd year cycle, you know, your 5 and 6-year-olds that serve as mentors and leaders for the environment. So an ideal Montessori classroom would have anywhere from 22 to 30 children in it. And you need to have a complement of each age range. So you try to have a third of your class 3-year-olds, a third 4-year-olds, and a third 5 to 6-year-olds.
Okay. And do you know how many students will be moving up from La Casa this year?
Yeah, off the top of my head, it's hard for me to grasp all the numbers. We have quite a few students that are actually turning 3, right? So for those of you who don't know, once you turn 3, you transition up. I want to count like at least, is it 9, Miss Woods? Are you still out there? Do you know off the top of your head? Diana, you were muted for the very beginning of that. Could you repeat?
Yes, I did. Actually, I think we have 10 children. A couple of them turn 3 in the fall, but most of them turn 3 in the summer. So we got quite a group and more boys than girls.
Thank you.
Of course.
Other
Lots
questions?
of boys right now.
Not really.
I do have another, if that's okay.
Yep.
Obviously, the circumstances are out of everyone's control right now, and I'm sure that there are lots of different options being tossed around in terms of what the fall will look like, whether there'll be physical students in class, whether it will still be a combination of distance learning and such. I would love to hear a little bit more about just some of the ideas that you are thinking of, but I also was curious. We were not originally planning on being here. We have adjusted our plans, so we are excited to still be a part of the Montessori family here, and excited to have our daughter move up with you guys as well. I would love to come in and see the primary classrooms if possible. Is that something that might be an option? either over the summer as we get closer, if it's more comfortable to do an in-person then, or at any point between now and then, basically.
Sure. So I would say at this time, lots of things are options because there are so many things up in the air. Like, it's a very nebulous answer. But, you know, at this time, we're really focused on delivering a really strong program for our school community to close out this school year, right? And taking people's opinions and feedback around the best ways to do that, both internally, externally, and from you, our parent body. Our goal, of course, beyond that is to provide, you know, an on-campus program, right? That's the goal. We want everyone to be here, you know, as it is safe to do so. So that's the ultimate goal. And as you can imagine, lots of plans, procedures, scenarios, right, have to be put in place for us to do that in a safe way. And those are things that we're working on right now as a leadership team, as a staff, you know, teaching team. Everybody's kind of putting their heads together to figure out what ways we can make that happen to be an ultimate goal. Now, as far as you coming in and seeing the classroom, I don't have an answer for you on that right now. But as that, you know, presents itself, we certainly will reach out and be as flexible as we can per any kind of guidelines. I hope that helps. And if there's anyone else who wants to chime in on that, please feel free.
Absolutely, and I don't envy your position at all. So. Fully understand that everything takes flexibility right now, and there is no way to predict exactly what things will look like next week, a month from now, or 3 months from now. So thank you.
Thank you, no problem. Other questions? This would be the point in the
I have something that I would like
Sure,
to
yeah.
discuss. Is the half-day program for the younger children. Ms. Summer, Ms. Boyle, and Ms. Bollinger, if you could talk about that. We did in our meeting for parents of toddlers moving up, but I would just like you to talk about that too.
I'm not entirely sure. Do you mean
The children, the younger, yes, the half, well, if school is back to normal.
It's unlike in CASA, where they stay in that room for the entire day. So when they're in primary, when they are 3 and 4 years of age, if you have opted to stay until later in the day, their classroom program finishes for them at 11:30. And if they stay at school, they go to BEC, which is the after school care. And our older children have lunch in our classrooms with our assistants, and they have a second work cycle in the classroom. But the younger children go to BEC, so that's a little different. Is that what you were talking about,
Yes,
Diana?
thank you.
And I hope I explained it clearly.
Maybe tell them what BEC is, Mandy.
Yeah, that's a lot of acts.
Would someone else like to do that, Bib?
Yeah, I can do that. So BEC is just, it's a time where they go in and they have a rest time, usually for, I think it's between 45 minutes or longer. Whether or not they sleep, you know, so your child may nap, some children don't, but it is a rest time that they're all required to take a rest. They have lunch before that in BEC, then they go rest. And then it's kind of, I want to say it's more puzzles and games. So there might be more things like Legos and blocks that they're doing, little art projects. Sometimes they're doing cooking. So there's a lot of things they're dipping into at BEC once they leave our classroom. And then as they get older and are showing more signs of readiness, later 4s to 5 is when we usually start saying, okay, they're almost ready to stay for extended day, which is the whole day in the classroom with us. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies. Any additional questions from the group?
I have one last question. I just don't want to monopolize the conversation. I know from other parents who had children that were going to move up, in the meeting that they had while we were still in session, she had mentioned that normally there is kind of an interim period where the child meets all three teachers, and you get to kind of all see each other and see, in terms of the mix of kids and ages, which classroom the child would be best fit in. How would that be done, given that we wouldn't really be able to meet the teachers in advance in this case? I'm sorry if I didn't explain that well, but.
Thank you for the question. Is that something that either our guides or Ms. McCabe, can you speak to that?
I think we're still working on that, really, because for the younger children especially, we all wish we could be in the classroom right now, and it's the youngest ones are the ones that have the hardest time with this online stuff, and meeting them is definitely something we all want, but we haven't quite gotten to the point of how we're going to do that in a safe manner. But it is definitely on the table of what we would like to have happen for next school year and before next school year. It is something, an ongoing discussion. So it is it's definitely, we're trying to figure that one out. I think I covered as much as I know.
I think to clarify that, so there's not confusion, when we say meeting with the three teachers, I think it's the current toddler teacher, the prospective new primary teacher, and then the classroom assistant. So it's you're not meeting the whole gang, you're meeting the classroom that your child's assigned to. Okay. So you have a chance to observe in that classroom if you'd like to, in a typical way. But I think that I know we have some opportunities for you to be viewing some of the videos and things that the teachers are currently doing, so you have an idea of a little taste while we're in this sort of new normal. But yes, we're working on all kinds of ideas, so we hesitate to say any of them, as you can imagine, right? And every day is different, and the next day brings something new for us to consider. So we certainly have the best intention to do the absolute most we can to provide you the opportunity to, and your children all the opportunity to meet their new teacher in the best way possible.
Another thing that and this goes with any year, not just this particular challenging year, but placements of children is not typically done early in this time of year. It would be done later in closer to the beginning of a school year, simply because we do want to balance the classrooms as best as we can, given boys and girls and 3s and 4s. And so we caution placing too early. And then when your child does get to meet with their teacher, hopefully they're meeting with the teacher they'll be with, rather than something that happens later on that we have to change things around. So.
And just to add to what both Ms. Summer and Ms. Boyle said, and Ms. McCabe, is so we're still in the enrollment process with who's returning. And so we need to see who is returning in our class, what those various age ranges are, and then that allows us to see where the best fit for your children are going to be. And so as always, we're not only balancing for 1 year, we're balancing for a 3-year cycle. So if your child's 3 years coming in, we're trying to balance that room, not just for next year, but for the whole 3 years, so for that continuity, consistency, and the best learning environment for everybody.
Thank you all. Additional questions from the group? I know we're wrapping up kind of our time, but happy to take some more questions. It's been a thorough presentation, I trust. All right, well, everybody who's out there knows how to reach us. I know we're pretty well connected already. I am happy to talk through any questions that you have, especially Ms. Jones, to wrap up your process so we can get connected. And to all of our other families, thanks for being here today. Thanks for your support. Thank you to our primary team. Really appreciate the time. But with that, I hope you have a good afternoon and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cara.
Welcome, new families.
Thank you.
Thank